good morning, and good morning again. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I want to say what a great day it is to be alive. I am just ecstatic that I was found on the wake up list this morning. I want to say welcome to you who are joining us by Facebook Live. Come on in. We got a few moments to invite you in this morning. If you're joining us by way of Facebook Live, we say good morning to you. And maybe you're joining us also by way of YouTube this morning. What a great privilege it is that the good Lord above has allowed us to see another satisfying Saturday. There it is right there. I'm just grateful today. We want to say to you, if you're joining us for the first time, thank you again for taking time out. Come on in this morning. We have a wonderful 60 minutes set aside for you today. We don't want to waste any of your time. We go straight in. This is a broadcast that's designed for you. I want to tell you a couple of ways how you can join us if this is your first time, or maybe you want to invite someone else in this morning to be able to join the broadcast as well. We have a couple of quick ways. First of all, you can join us by way of Facebook Live. Just click right on the link and come on in, just like you did this morning. You can also send this link to someone else and ask them to dial in on our YouTube channel, Dr. K.L. Williams Space Ministry, MINISTRY. And then we also have a phone line, 605-313-6300. And you can see the access code. Also, today is a very special day. We'll be talking about this all throughout the day. We have our special guest, our licensed counselor, who is going to be on with us. We'll tell you more about him shortly. But today, if you have questions that you want our counselor to address, this Your Voice Matters is down in the bottom. All you do is send a link, email to this bit.ly, Real Talk, Your Voice. If you'll send us a link, your questions to that link, I'll tell you, we'll capture them for you. This is every Saturday for 60 minutes. We've been hanging out with you on a series, first of all, on looking for love in all the wrong places. Let me tell you what this broadcast does. Every week at 9 a.m., it's real talk. Listen, it's real discussion, open, honest, transparent, putting it out on the table. This is not for teenagers. This is not for the weak of heart. Listen, I've already had to put somebody in their place. This is the bottom line of this broadcast. Is not for somebody who's really trying to play games. If you're trying to play games, this broadcast is not for you, because we're going to call you out. And the reality is we have some wonderful tools and resources as well. We want you to be informed, empowered, and inspired as a result of this broadcast. And so you'll see at the bottom of your screen, we're going to keep flashing that link so you can continue to send your questions in to our guest panelists today. I want to tell you just briefly, one of the things that we've also been trying to focus on right now, you all have been asking me to keep a little bit of the boundaries on the front end of this broadcast. And so just about a good 60 seconds, I want to tell you that there are warning signs that you don't have boundaries. Keep in mind, good morning, Reverend Celestine, all the way from Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Good morning, Mr. Flanagan, amen, from Jacksonville, my mentor down in Jacksonville, elementary school teacher, still inspiring us in our stage of life. Listen, if you're here today, would you just do just like those two viewers do? If you just send a good morning, hello, amen, something to let us know that you're joining us. I promise you we'll give you a shout out throughout the course of this broadcast. Now, today, we've been talking about boundaries. What I want to do is tell you for about 60 seconds on ways to know that you don't have boundaries. We talked about, first of all, don't catch the virus, that there are people, if they are in your presence and they come in your presence and bring negativity, they're catching and giving you a virus, and then you end up being negative in your relationship because somebody else is bringing a good morning, Miss Ethel, all the way from Virginia as well this morning. What I want to say to you is not only should you not catch the virus, that is, don't give someone power in your relationship, because misery loves company. Who am I speaking to on a Saturday morning? Put up those boundaries and refuse to allow someone who is negative, who is miserable, who is not happy to infiltrate into your personal property and your relationship and bring negativity. Another sure sign that you need boundaries is this word today is called triangulation. Listen, it's a wonderful way of saying three is a crowd. Let me tell you how triangulation works. You have person A who is upset with person B, and then person A finds person C to talk about person B. It's another way of saying that in this situation called relationships, you got to learn how to deal with the person at hand. Because can I tell you something? Sometimes dealing with person C, let me help you real good. They got some ill will, and if you're not real careful, there'll be a sounding board pushing out negativity, and guess what? Person B is innocently hanging out with some situations that they don't even know about. You know that this thing called triangulation, it produces dysfunctional relationships. And I'm telling somebody this morning, in no uncertain terms, if you have an issue with someone in a relationship, go to them, because guess what? There's nothing any more fair. It's unfair to hold somebody in contempt and they don't even know what in the world you're talking about. So in my short version, we'll revisit this again later, but in the good book, it says, listen, if you have an alt with your brother, go to them and them alone. It is the opposite of triangulation. Three is a crowd. That's all I want to tell you this morning. And if you hanging out with person C, cut them off and talk to person B and let them know exactly what the issue is. Can I tell you something? If you're listening real good, it'll draw the two of you a lot closer, because person B may just have an innocent demeanor that they don't even know why you're even having an issue. I know people that are still hung up on issues with people in a relationship, and the other person don't even know why you all jacked up. I'm telling you, talk to the person. That's all I got for you today. It's called triangulation. Listen, we're here today also to talk about relationships, healthy, happy relationships, what it looks like, what it desires, and what it can produce. I am so happy today to bring a licensed counselor, therapist. He's helping people all over this country. I know personally, I've been on platforms with him where you see people just pouring out of their souls because he's tapped into those soft spaces. And what a privilege we have here on the Real Talk broadcast, Life's Issues coaching series, to bring you. I've heard your request. Good morning, Sister Satchel, as well. We've heard your request that you wanted us to bring you a counselor or therapist where you could ask some questions. And so this is what we're going to do today. I am eternally thankful for Dr. Mendez. I'm going to ask him to be able to come on one more time today, lay out some basic theories and practices to help us in relationships. And then if you will send your questions, all of them, he has agreed on next Saturday to have just an open Q&A session. I'm telling you, I don't know what I did to please the Lord, because I'm telling you right now, that is awesome. And on so many levels, you see the link at the bottom. So while he's presenting today, all you have to do is to send your question to that link below. And I promise you, we'll get those to him, and he'll start with those first, and then he'll take any more additional questions. My time is up because I want to give you maximum exposure to our guest counselor and therapist today, Dr. John Mendez. I'm certainly thankful for you hanging out with us on an early Saturday morning. And what a mighty God we serve today. We're thankful for the lives that you have changed and touched. I've witnessed personally pastors, faith leaders, and then just regular community people who are trying to get this thing right called a relationship. And so I want to thank you again in your own way. You can just take over and I'll digress, and you can have the remainder of the broadcast. God bless you this morning, Dr. Mendez.
Thank you, Bishop, for this opportunity again. And it seems like we've been going a lot further than we had initially anticipated.
Absolutely.
But I've enjoyed every session, and I'm glad to know that people are taking it in. Yes. And what I want to do today, and I want to say good morning to everybody out there, But what I thought I'd do today, we focused a lot on the problems. We focused on why situations become what they are. But I thought it would be good today to focus on how we get through them. Whatever the problems may be, how do we handle them? How do we get through them? How do we, what are some of the solutions that uh, may be available to us? And I've worked with a number of people to know that some things really work. Mm-hmm. And if you want it bad enough, you can make it work. So I thought what I would address this morning is what I call changing the script, or change the script. You remember over the last couple of weeks, we talked about how we develop patterns, mainly that protect ourselves, patterns that protect our pain, that protect our weaknesses, patterns that protect our anger, even. And I'm of the opinion and experience that people do change and situations change. If you don't believe in change, then there's very little hope that any kind of progress can be made. So this morning, I really want to focus on change. How do we change situations and whatnot? Being from New York, there's a saying we used to say all the time as it related to the subway. And I love subways. I rode on subways literally all over the world, from Russia to Japan, all over Europe. I love trains, but there's no subway like the New York subway. But there was a saying that that and a token will get you on the subway. And what that means is that insight is important. And what we've been doing over the last several weeks is talking about insight, becoming conscious and aware of situations, what's happening, why we feel the way that we feel, etc. But today I want to focus on how to move from insight to action. If in fact you are engaged or disengaged, and if you're involved in a disengaged script, you have to, in a real sense, stop and really talk to each other. That's one of the most important things. If you are in a relationship where anger predominates, you have to stop yelling and screaming at each other and start listening. If you spend your energy pursuing or avoiding, you have to both make a commitment to stop and face each other. If in fact you hide your conflict under a fantasy of perfect oneness, and there are a lot of couples that want you to think everything is just perfect with them, when in fact it's a long way from that, then you have to learn to communicate about the real issues and feelings that you have. So the real question I want to raise this morning is, do you want a relationship that protects you from reliving childhood pain? And you remember a few weeks ago, we talked about childhood pain. so much of what we argue and fight about is related to childhood pain. Or do you want a relationship that heals? Um, Changing a relationship requires that each of you, as individuals, commit to changing your own behavior, um, as well as a mutual commitment to try to, as couples, to change your script. So, what we're going to focus on is we have to change individually, and then how do we contribute to that change um, mutually as a couple, as a group. So, if you understand what we talked about, I think it was last week, about the invisible relationship that you have, and how does that become more conscious? How do we become more aware of of the invisible relationship rather than just focusing on what we see, what we know, what is conscious in our minds. And one of the basic insights is that you may have developed a relationship that recreates some of the most painful parts of your childhood. This insight can lead to a great sadness, even despair. But I think a healthier way uh, to use this insight is to tell yourself that this relationship shows you where your individual work is. I hope you got that. Let me maybe repeat that again. Um, Again, one of the basic insights is that you may have developed a relationship that recreates some of the most painful parts of your childhood. This insight can make you sad, can even make you feel despair, but a more healthier approach to using this insight is to tell yourself that the relationship shows you where your individual work is, what it is that you really have to focus on and work on. A lot of us come to the relationship with childhood pain, and that's all we focus on, to the point that it becomes unconscious, and we can drive our partner crazy with trying to deal with forcing that childhood pain on the other. Um, I mentioned, I think a couple of weeks ago, about when couples come together, we think that we have consciously made that decision, but the brain only knows certain patterns. And when those patterns line up, you really have a hit. And but the brain only knows those patterns, and those patterns can relate a good relationship, or it can relate a bad relationship, depending on the nature of the caregiver. And if the caregiver is bad, even though you got a hit, but you're going to pick somebody like your caregiver, and all of that becomes involved in the relationship again, and you find yourself fighting and angry and don't really know why. But this insight is really important, so that these type of feelings alert generally the defenses within us, and that's what takes over. And so we're so committed to being defensive, protecting our turf, protecting how we feel, protecting our pain, that simple things just break into becomes a crisis, if you will. And most of the times we're not even aware of why we feel the way we feel and why we respond the way that we respond. And let me just say, none of this is easy. Most of this is difficult. But I'm going to suggest, and then I'll open up for questions, several ways of dealing with a lot of this. And the first is it's important to emphasize feelings instead of accusations. Emphasize feelings rather than accusations. Accusations put the communication in the realm of who's right and who's wrong. That turns into a power struggle. The winner takes all and the loser gets nothing. You spend your time fighting to win, to defend your turf, defend what you really feeling. But this triggers that defensive reaction that I've been talking about. And it lessens the possibility of an open, understanding response. Feelings, on the other hand, are incontrovertible. No matter who's responsible, this is the way that you feel. And that's why I emphasize feelings over accusations, because it's important for each other to understand how the other feels. And the importance of that is it instills within the individual a sense of empathy. And this is what you want, to feel the empathy that the other person is feeling, rather than fight to win and fight over turf. That's important. Secondly, ask for change instead of placing the blame. It's always easier to engage in blame, but effective communication not only communicates feelings that I just talked about, but it also contains a request for action that implies change. Learning to ask for what you want instead of blaming your partner for not giving it to you is probably the single most important thing you can do to improve the communication. Let me repeat that again. Learning to ask for what you want instead of blaming your partner for not giving it to you is probably the single most important thing you can do to improve your communications. Learning to change, or I should let me put it this way: learning to change blame statements into requests puts the emphasis on change. Most people come at you in the most negative, despairing manner, hiding what they really want, but they insinuate it as if you got some kind of osmosis of some type where you're supposed to understand. To put it another way is, you often hear people talk about you should know. You ought to have known. No. You can live with somebody 100 years and wake up on your 101st birthday and say something and do something you never said before. And we sit back, we anticipate, we expect all of our needs to be met, and we assume the partner knows what all our needs are, and it just never works that way. But it's important to ask for what you need, what you really want. Cut the guessing out. It never works. But it's important to do that. The third piece is be active instead of passive. Be active instead of passive. You cannot simultaneously assert yourself and play a helpless victim. Doesn't go anywhere. Playing the victim will only make you more miserable and keep the tension going. But communicating what we want, and I want to emphasize that again, communicating what we want from our partner forces us to take an active role. That's why talking is so important. It helps you to take an active role. And once you have conveyed your needs directly, you do not have to do so passive aggressively by sabotaging the relationship. And that's what a number of people generally do, couples do. Even if they communicate it, then turn around and sabotage the relationship, and you're back really where you started. Often, the very act of taking an active role in communicating your needs is enough to change change the script, as I've been talking about. And it's a beautiful thing when couples begin to understand and address each other's needs. That's the key that should be underscored. And then fourthly, slow down. Much of my work, for instance, with couples is getting them to slow down. Things don't change overnight, but I sometimes use the metaphor of a slow motion replay camera. When things begin to accelerate, it's necessary to back off sometimes and slow down in order to keep the progress moving. Sometimes a time, like with children, sometimes you got to take a time out and chill and cool. sort of back off a little bit and think about what's useful, what's necessary. But it must be accompanied by a commitment to finish the conversation, or else one or both of the partners will feel this sense of abandonment. So if you get it going, you're making progress, understand that it's not going to happen literally overnight. But it's a progress in work. It's a progress that's moving, but it doesn't necessarily have to move overnight. But it's the interaction with each other that is so revealing and insightful that it helps you to, in fact, speak to those needs that have been revealed and manifested. Now, the other thing that I want to emphasize, in addition to these four possibilities, is that I kept talking about blaming, looking at each other's faults. If, in fact, change is going to happen, it begins first with you as an individual. The individual must change. And if the individual changes, then the couple, partner, who's also looking at himself or herself, will change as well. And that's predicated on the insightfulness that you have gained in the course of addressing what it is that you really feel and what it is that you particularly need. So it really begins with me as an individual. Though relationships are a system, and there is a system approach to that, and though you are influenced by many unconscious factors, as we've been talking about, the will to change your relationship must come from inside of you. And it is far easier to point the finger and blame your partner for what's wrong with the relationship than to see your own part and resolve to change it. Whenever I deal with couples and they're blaming each other, this one did this and this one did that, you got to remember that two people are involved. And that relationship is in fact predicated on each of you, and takes two. It takes two to deal with a relationship, and it's cause and effect, but also it's not only cause and effect, but both people are involved in the cause. And just go back to many of the things that I talked about over the last couple of weeks, and childhood pain and the patterns and all of those kinds of things are involved in the relationship. And let me also say that, and I keep repeating this, that it's not easy. It takes courage and determination to take responsibility for your part in a relationship. Our societies condition us to always have to win. If you really want to win, then it's important that both partners seriously look at changing themselves. And you can almost feel the balance shift inside yourself when you actually do it, when you actually try to do it. And this shift can have immediate effects on the relationship. We hear things like he or she's withholding, she or he is frigid, she or he is absolutely emotionally unavailable. A man is complaining, a woman is complaining. And as they have been acting this way for months, maybe even for years. So, what's your part in making that happen? I'll ask, and suddenly he seems to get it. I'm after her all the time. I guess I approach her with a lot of negativity. Why would you ask her or him for contact in a way that you know is going to get you rejected? What's in it that's for you? What do you get out of it? I'll ask, pressing the point, he or she hesitate, try to avoid the oncoming recognition. But then, I guess I have got 10 used to, I'm used to fighting, and that's where I'm at my best. But maybe it's safer than being close to each other. If I get rejected, I know how to handle rejection. Maybe if she was really available, I have a hard time letting myself trust it. These are some of the things we get tangled up in that make it hard to communicate. But when one partner owns his or her part in the relationship, it feels it feels in the room as if a spell has been broken, has been lifted, and long buried feelings of relief and softness appear on faces that moments ago may have been chiseled in hardness. The partner reports, I felt so hurt by your blame. It's just amazing to hear you admit that you had a part in it. I've been so angry at you. And even when I felt turned on to you, I've stopped myself. I just wanted to punish you. If I saw you as all bad, I didn't have to risk opening up to you. You see how these roadblocks interfere with the communication and with reaching out, because we become our heels well dug in to these other feelings as such. But taking responsibility for your part in your relationship involves 2 steps. And you might want to note this when you take part in your relationship. The first is taking responsibility for your own behavior. Take responsibility for your own behavior and see how you help create the problems in the relationship. And second is realizing that you have an unconscious stake in maintaining the problem, that you have an unconscious state in maintaining the problem. You got used to it. You learn to live with it. You learn to settle in it. And so once you dig your heels in there, don't expect any kind of real change. But to start taking responsibility for your own behavior, it is useful to accept that there is an element of truth in how your partner sees you. And of course, he or she distorts or exaggerates. And of course, this injures you further. But if you spend all your time being defensive and never take time to listen to what your partner is really saying about you, nothing is likely to change. One man or one woman may keep maintaining that he or she is a good listener, but the other person may keep saying that she or he felt discounted. I hear every word you say, one may insist. And it was true. And it was true that he or she did record her statements or his statements, but only because he or she was formulating a rebuttal. And for him to take responsibility, or for her to take responsibility for his or her own behavior, he or she would have to say, "You're right. I have a difficult time respecting your thoughts and your feelings." So it's easy to focus on the inflammatory or indirect ways that your partner communicates and dodge what is really being said. So I would suggest that you start small. Once you've taken responsibility for your part in maintaining the relationship's script, the next step is to change the script. And this begins with a single action, not with a commitment to universal change, but start small. It may seem futile compared to the size of the problem, but it's really not. So I'm going to put a pin there. And well, let me say this, that one of the important things to do to also move this relationship forward is to negotiate new agreements. Negotiate new agreements. Just sitting down and trying to negotiate agreements in a relationship sends a message to your childlike defensive self that says there are adults in charge now, but you don't have to protect us anymore. If you do not understand the unconscious dynamics of the invisible relationship, you would think that creating a marriage or a relationship based on agreements would be relatively straightforward. I'll agree not to nag you if you agree to do the dishes. Of course, when we look at the way um, a wife or a husband is nagging, and how organized it is by an unconscious belief that she must remain in a powerless position in order to maintain intimate contact, and the way the husband refuses or the man refuses to do the dishes goes back to a struggle to rest his or her newborn. Well, let's talk about the male here. The newborn maleness from his mother's control. So we see the task in a truer perspective. And we understand again why resting conscious control of our behavior in relationships is often so difficult. So a single step toward negotiating a solution to a single problem can bring about a powerful change to what has always been a defensive script as such. Okay, I'll stop there.
All right, Dr. Mendez. Wow, what an amazing, impactful session again this morning. Very deep truths, and I am in total agreement with you. Negotiating new agreements. There's a book that I want to offer to our group as well, called The Four Agreements. It's a wonderful relational book to help people in relationships as well. To your point, it argues that if you're going to have a successful run at it, there's certain agreements that you have to have, and so I applaud you for really just giving us some very practical ways to move our relationships forward. And I also want to really re-echo this being emotionally unavailable. That is so profound in our exchanges with people that we're in relationship with, in whatever way, whether it's emotionally unavailable spiritually, you can be that emotionally unavailable, professionally. You're just going through the motions on the job without any serious interaction. And then we know you can be emotionally unavailable in family relationships. This is so profound for us today, just asking the probing question: are you emotionally available? Thank you again. And obviously in romantic relationships as well, that people have been so broken or so scarred until they're just going through the motions. They're there. Somebody wrote a song, Dr. Mendez, that said your body is here with me, but your mind is on the other side of town. Listen, let me talk to somebody today that you can be emotionally unavailable. And I want to thank you for that. There are so many questions that are already in the queue this morning. I want to give a big shout out to you again, Dr. Mendez, for just these fundamental principles. And I like the balance that you brought, and that is each of us in these relationships, whatever the relationship is, we have to take responsibility too. It's not just a one-sided conversation. And what a wonderful place it is to bring us to accountability. Thank you for that so much. And then my biggest contribution today was your second point. Realize when you have an unconscious state, that is, that people can get so used to bad things until they declare it as the reality moving forward. I don't know who we're speaking to today, but Dr. Mendez, that's a profound challenge for somebody. Listen, who is it that's on this broadcast today that you have heard it? You've been doing it so long until you actually think that it is the right thing to do. I want to thank you again. I agree with Mr. Flanagan. who conferred that there are very relevant strategies today, Dr. Mendez. I just want to remind the viewers that you will be with us once again next week, answering all of the questions. I'm going to go ahead and give one or two. We got about 8 minutes left, Dr. Mendez. We want to put your information on the screen that somebody might want to be able to take advantage of an actual one-on-one session with Dr. Mendez. You see his name and his business and his geographical location, his phone number, and his email there. I would advise you and admonish you if you have some complexities in a relationship that exceed beyond what we're able to offer here, that you take that next proactive step. Reach out to Dr. Mendez. I promise you, you won't regret that gesture. Just for a moment today, Dr. Mendez, there's a question that came in this morning already. The question is, I want to ask, what do you want in a long term, but don't know how? The question again is, I want to ask, what do you want in the long term, but don't know how? They don't know how to ask the question. And can you give them some advice on trying to get to what the other person wants in the relationship long term?
Yeah. Let me begin by saying that none of us none of us have taken a course in relationships, in marriage, or whatever. We come to those relationships shooting from the hip or predicated on what we feel, but don't have any theory about what a relationship is and how we ought to proceed as such. That's why a few weeks ago, I recommended the book, Getting the Love You Want, so that it gives you some kind of theoretical framework to work from, to understand what to anticipate in a relationship. And the second thing is, a lot of us have been conditioned not to ask questions, not to seek to understand what it is that we don't know. So that's why I kept emphasizing earlier about communicating needs and feelings over against trying to shape our relationships and what we see on TV, or what we fantasize, as such. That looks good, but in reality, it's not real. So don't be so hard on yourself or blame yourself for what you don't know. But it's helpful to work from some kind of theoretical perspective. And what you recommended and some of the other sources that we recommended would be very helpful in terms of working from a theoretical framework rather than moving blindly.
Very good, Dr. Mendez. That's awesome. And I've had this asked to me as a faith leader as well. I would love to put this person's questions on the screen. What do I do to deal with the fact that my partner doesn't enjoy being with my friends?
That's a loaded question. One of the things about abuse is the partner wants to isolate the other partner so that it hides a whole lot of the negative things and mean things and abusive things that's done. Let me go back to what I said a few weeks ago. When couples come together, they come out of two different worlds. And you don't know each other. And you're not used to necessarily doing the same things. And let me introduce something I did not introduce earlier. Too often we want to shape the other person into our image. And we want that person for ourselves. Truth of the matter is that we all represent more than ourselves, unless it's something negative and the crowd of the other person is dangerous, negative, etc. Then what you see is what you get. And it's important to recognize that and understand that we're social and we're part of a larger community. I got friends that my wife don't know. My wife got friends that I don't know. You know, we still have our individual worlds and interactions, and that shouldn't be a threat.
Absolutely.
But in fact, it ought to enhance things. I remember, and I did it more at my first church than here, and I may have done it here a few times, but a lot of times we used to have different members who were close to us. Everybody's not close to you, but you do have those persons that are close to you, and we used to have different dinner parties and things of that nature. They were our friends, but then there are other friends that we know not of. And it goes back to what I said last week, that we all don't do the same thing and not going to do the same thing. I like some things that my wife doesn't like, and my wife likes some things I don't like. That's not a threat. You know, it's a preference. So in a real sense, it's about maintaining individuality as well as maintaining the social aspects of us. But I don't think in any relationship, any individual ought to be isolated, alienated, and separated from his or her larger community. That's dangerous. And that's what abusive people do.
Dr. Mendez, I tell you what, I believe you have set somebody free today. The reality is that so many people use it as a control tool to try to manipulate people to conform to their own selfish ideas. And the reality is, I tell people all the time, even in identical twins, we all have our own DNA. God did that for a reason, so that we all can always, even though we come together in relationships, you don't lose who you are in the relationship. And that's a powerful place for us to end. Listen, we've got the thank you, viewers. You have responded to the links. Dr. Mendez, they're coming in about it. I can't wait for next week. That's all we have for you today. I am just excited. For those of you that sent your questions in, I ask you to join us on next week. Dr. Mendez is going to have a Q&A session open up just about the whole broadcast to help give you some practical tools, strategies, and also resources to help you in your relationship quest for healthy, happy relationships. Dr. Mendez, you want to have any last words for us? Our time is up today. I want to thank you for yours. And I'm telling you right now, I'm already waiting for this Q&A session. Somebody is going to be set free even as you continue to probe us on these healthy, happy relationships. Any last parting words for us?
Just to reiterate that we are relational beings. My favorite word is Ubuntu.
Ooh.
I am because we are. And that's something that this society tragically and unfortunately does not really believe in, which is why this pandemic is going to have a difficult time resolving itself, because we selfishly continue to advocate for my individual rights rather than that we're part of a community and we're responsible for each other. Ubuntu, the South Africans, Bishop Tutu was very clear about this, that I can't be what I ought to be until you become what you ought to be. So in the real sense, we're responsible for each other. I think it's important to bring that principle to our relationships, because we are reflective of each other. I am because we are, and because we are, therefore I am.
I said good, Doc. Listen, I'm a Martin Luther King Jr. scholar, and Martin Luther King said it another way, that we are caught in this inescapable trap of mutuality. And he says, I cannot be what I am to be until you become what you are to be. We are in this together. What a wonderful way to close our session today. I want to give a big shout out to my colleague, Reverend Tally Brame, all the way from the Warrenton area as well. God bless you again. Thank you so much, everyone. We're asking you, bring your friends next Saturday for 60 minutes of your questions. You have the link at the bottom. Our time is up, but I promise you, if you send those questions to that link at the bottom, we will put those in the queue, and we'll let Dr. Mendez just go out on one by one. Again, I love you, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Dr. Mendez, would you be kind enough to give us our closing prayer today?
I said to the one who stood at the gate of the rest of our life, give us a light that we might tread these unknown paths and participate in new adventures of faith. The one who stood at the gate of the rest of our lives said unto us, go forth and let it shine. Let it shine until every valley is exhausted, every mountain and hill is made low, the rough places are made smooth, and the crooked places are made straight. Let it shine until the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. Amen.
Amen. Thank you again. The Lord bless you and the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you, and may he be gracious unto you. And may the Lord give you peace and face toward you until we meet again. Amen. In Jesus' name, have a wonderful Saturday. And I always leave you with these words. If you can't love all of me, then leave all of me right where you found me. I love you. And that's all the time we have for this week. Until next time. God